A single long-range strike in the Caspian Sea just shattered a massive geopolitical illusion and linked the wars in Ukraine and Iran forever. But it could be far bigger than that. Reports came out early Saturday morning that Ukraine struck an Iranian cargo vessel in open water, and the location matters. The Black Sea has been a fireworks show, but Ukraine and Russia both border it. The Caspian Sea, though, that's essentially a giant landlocked lake bordered only by Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, Russia, and Iran. There's no entrance or exit for naval vessels. No Western militaries patrol these waters. Ukraine has hit Caspian targets before, but always along Russia's coastline, targeting military bases or oil facilities. This one was different. Ukraine struck an Iranian supply boat in open water. For years, the Caspian was a logistical safe haven. Russia and Iran trade weapons and equipment back and forth with zero stress. But Ukraine just broke all that, sending a direct message. Iran, if you send materials to build weapons used against our people, you are fair game. Predictably, Tehran complained as if they were an innocent bystander. But remember, Iran recently just warned Britain that materially supporting the US would make them fair game too. They just don't like it when that exact same logic got turned back on them. This is a direct physical hit on the axis of evasion. Russia, China, and Iran built a massive sanction-busting network of shadow fleets, shell companies, and commercial smugglers. Most Western nations respond to this with finger-wagging and press releases. That doesn't work. Iran's been under sanctions for decades, and Russia is completely inoculated to being a Western pariah. Boats, however, are not inoculated to missiles. Later on in the day, Zelensky confirmed the strike. He spent most of his address listing off targets deep inside Russia, a military plant in Kirov 1,200 kilometers away, an oil refinery in Tumen, a facility in Yekaterinburg. And then right at the very end, he just casually drops this. Quote, "We also achieved very strong results with long-range strikes in the Caspian Sea, including vessels used in military cargo shipments involving Iran." He just slips that right under the radar. Oh, by the way, we struck Iran. It was a fun night. No big deal, right? And then shortly after, Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs dropped a fiery condemnation, claiming Ukraine attacked an innocent commercial vessel, killing a sailor and violating the UN Charter. Ukraine, how could you do this? Look, Iran frames this as a purely commercial ship because that's their entire operational playbook. Their smuggling strategy deliberately blurs the line between civilian and military so they can hide weapons behind commercial fronts, and then cry wolf the second they get hit. It's an asymmetric tactic used all across their entire proxy network, and frankly, it's brilliant. It routinely wins them sympathy from well-meaning but naive observers. Now, let's be completely clear, targeting real civilians is wrong, morally, strategically, and operationally. If your victims are actual non-combatants, killing them achieves nothing strategically, and it guarantees you lose the information war. But I highly doubt this was a purely civilian vessel. And right after Iran's response, Zelensky sweetened the pot. He announced Ukraine has intelligence proving Russia is actively helping Iran target American military bases in the Middle East. According to Ukrainian intelligence, Russian satellites have been conducting heavy surveillance over the Gulf states and US facilities, and those exact coordinates are being fed straight to Tehran. Just between July 19th and 20th, Russian satellites zeroed in on 4 US-linked air bases across Bahrain, Jordan, and Kuwait. And there's a direct correlation between these satellite passes and precision Iranian drone and missile strikes. When Iran launched those deadly precision strikes on US bases in Jordan last week, some OSINT accounts claimed Iran was acting entirely on its own, and that blaming Russia was just US cope, to avoid admitting Iran has formidable tech. And I'll admit it felt like US cope to me at first too, but the evidence tells a different story. Iran has satellites, but they lack high resolution. They can't pinpoint fine-grained targets like Patriot missile batteries, radar arrays, or covert facilities. Russia supplies that high-grade satellite targeting directly. And it's not just Russia. Beijing plays a quieter game. While claiming neutrality, they allow commercial Chinese space companies, which answer directly to the CCP, to sell high-res satellite data to Tehran with plausible deniability. Why do this? Because testing tech against US air defenses via proxies is invaluable practice. Russia could face NATO head-to-head in Europe, and China is eyeing Taiwan. And not to sound cold here, but Ukraine and Iran are acting as basically live fire scrimmages for a much bigger war in the future. The US, Russia, and China have played proxy games in Syria and Yemen for years, but what's happening now isn't just a proxy war, it's a crossover. Think about the board right now. The US and Europe fund Ukraine against Russia. Russia and China support Iran against the US. Merging these two theaters exponentially increases the risk of a global cascade. If the US gets dragged deep into a conflict in the Middle East, Russia feels emboldened to push further into Europe, and China might decide a stretched thin American military can no longer defend Taiwan. So this Caspian Sea strike might be the exact moment future historians look back on and realize these were never isolated regional battles. With that one missile in a landlocked sea, Ukraine just stated the obvious. There are no separate theaters. It's the US versus Russia and China, just in different costumes. Now, why did Ukraine actually pull the trigger on this? And it comes down to two very clear reasons. The first one is practical. Iran is sending weapons and components to fuel Russian attacks on Ukrainian cities, and Kiev simply needs to stop that supply line at the source. If weapons are moving across the Caspian, blowing up the transport vessels is standard military necessity. But the second reason is a proposed exchange. Kiev desperately needs more heavy weapons and intelligence as Russia ramps up, but NATO remains hesitant to grant full security guarantees. But if Zelensky can turn to Washington and say, look, we're already fighting your enemies alongside you in the Middle East, it radically changes that dynamic. We're not just your proxy, we're your ally. The message is simple. We hit Iran for giving weapons to Russia. Might you consider hitting Russia for giving targeting data and weapons to Iran? It's a shrewd, high-level realpolitik move by Zelensky, even if it does push the world closer to a global flashpoint. Everyone is still keeping up appearances that these are separate fights, for now at least. But as the webs entangle, diplomatic off-ramps disappear. The odds of someone crossing an actual red line skyrocket. So this moment could be very consequential. I don't want war in Ukraine and I don't want war in Iran. Russia was foolish to invade Ukraine and the US was foolish to attack Iran. But history shows how fast regional conflicts spiral out of control. Just ask Archduke Franz Ferdinand. I mean, you can't actually ask him, but you get my point. When their survival is on the line, secondary powers like Iran or Ukraine will do whatever it takes to drag nuclear-armed superpowers into direct contact, even if it's a last-ditch effort to stay alive. And every day, this momentum will become harder and harder to stop. And right now, there's still time to turn back. At time of recording, there are talks of open communication and the strikes have slowed. This is a good thing. But will it hold? Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And I'm not just engagement baiting. Hearing other people's perspectives helped me develop my own in this complex time. So peace out, everybody.